Good evening, everybody. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com. Here once again with your weekly late Friday night wrap video, this time following Purdue's 81-76 win over Indiana here in Mackey Arena. I'm in the John Wooden room here at Purdue, or if you're just looking at the signage behind me, just do. Not on the court because this was the IU game. So what the IU game does is we're all of us in the media are just gremlins, and I might age myself by mentioning gremlins. And when IU shows up, somebody pours water on us and we multiply. So a lot of the out-of-towners from cover IU are out there on the court right now, and I can't do this in front of an audience in person. I can broadcast it to a few thousand people, oddly, but I can't do it with somebody listening live. So tell me if you can figure that out, because I sure as hell can. So once again, Purdue wins 81-76 over IU. Thank you to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support, as always. It is very much appreciated. This was a grind. You know, it's funny, I spent a lot of the pregame making fun of the old media trope of you throw the records out in a rivalry, anything can happen, you know. All the stuff we write when there's really nothing else to say, or we're just in a routine doing this for 30 years, that we just write the same story every year, regardless of how absurd it is and how the people involved are saying the same things every year, or we've just completely lost the perspective of the fact that this isn't 1987 or 1988, and all of these kids grew up in Indiana playing in this game. Anyway, I spent all my time in the pregame making fun of the media tropes of you throw the records out, anything can happen. And then sure enough, as this game plays out, a game between a Purdue team that is surging, trending very, very well, playing very well at both ends of the floor, and an IU team that seems perilously close to the wheels falling off altogether, coming into one of the hardest buildings in college basketball to win in. One would have thought this would have been a relatively incident-free win for Purdue, but hey, throw the records out in a rivalry. Anything can happen. So I guess I kind of spoke it into existence by making fun of our media cliches to the point where the media cliches came to life. But this was a grind for Purdue. I do want to mention this first off in explaining this game the best I can. You're not going to want to hear this, but I thought Indiana did a great job game planning for this game. I thought they did everything right except change their starting lineup, put Luke Goody on the floor more. But Purdue has been really good defensively. If you read my story last week on Purdue's defensive emergence, hopefully that explained it relatively clearly, and most of the words were spelled correctly. But the way to defeat what Purdue does defensively is to move the ball, is to reverse it, get the ball on the shallow side in terms of the side of the floor where Purdue's not loading up against the ball. And I thought IU did a really good job reversing the ball, and I thought they did a really good job in their ball screen offense, kicking out to the wing for threes and drives and things like that after it got Purdue on skates, having to deal with Umar Ballo rolling to the basket. And a good job by IU offensively doing what you need to do to score on this Purdue defense that has been so good here this season. And Mackenzie Mbako really, really went crazy in the first half relative to his results this season, because he was the guy on the backside of Purdue's defense, where when you reverse the ball, you go from having three guys playing against. Purdue has the numbers defensively. When you reverse it, all of a sudden the offense is basically one-on-one with a guy closing out. So if the guy can take away the three, great, but he's on skates and you can drive past him. I think that was a big part of what IU took advantage of. IU really shot the ball better than it normally does, and that was part of it. All credit to IU. But Purdue really had to grind through this one. I don't think there was ever a moment where I thought IU was going to win this game, but they certainly had themselves positioned to late in the first half, and then Purdue opens up the second half with a guy who's becoming a star, a guy who is going to be a first-team All-Big Ten player if there's any justice in the world based on how he's played thus far and what he has done in games like this. Braden Smith? No, I'm not talking about Braden Smith right now. He's already in those categories. Trey Kaufman-Renn, a guy who takes these games very seriously. He really wants to beat Indiana. This is a very important game for him. He goes 10 of 13 from the floor, 23 points. Purdue goes to him to open the second half, and that was what changed this game in Purdue's favor. Purdue clearly wanted to get Oumar Ballo, having to guard him in space away from the basket. They went to their inverted ball screen a few times. It worked every time, and I'm not sure why they got away from it other than Kaufman-Renn not being on the floor, which is going to bring us to our next topic. But Trey Kaufman-Renn dominated the first 5 minutes of the second half, and that really turned the tables on Indiana and really turned them in Purdue's favor to the point where it looked for a few moments there like Purdue was not only going to win this game, but they were going to win this game going away, because you've seen it so many times over the years where Purdue plays well to open the second half, this place goes crazy, and all of a sudden a close game at halftime is a 20-point Purdue lead. But Purdue, to IU's credit, couldn't really shake the Hoosiers and kind of run away and hide, and part of that was simply Trey Kaufman-Renn not being on the floor. When Kaufman-Renn was on the floor, Indiana could not stop Purdue in the second half, and foul trouble again for Kaufman-Renn. Matt Painter seemed to think that his two illegal screens were good calls. Those were fouls 3 and 4 that put him on the bench after he picked up 2 in the first half. I will tell you this, that when fouls were 6-1 against Indiana, you knew how that was going to go. It was going to get evened out. That's how Big Ten officiating works. And even if those screens were questionable, which I haven't gone back and watched them yet, I don't think those are calls that get made unless the official is looking for something to call. And when fouls are uneven in these games, you know how it goes in the Big Ten. A bunch of calls in a row are going to go against the team that's ahead in the foul category, and it's going to even itself out. And I think that Trey Kaufman-Renn's time on the bench is what put IU back in this game. To their credit, they took advantage of that opportunity. But I think that had those 2 illegal screens not gone against Purdue, this is a very different game. This is probably a double-digit Purdue win where Purdue never really is threatened at the end instead of having to survive this until the final seconds. That's just my opinion. I mean, but you can go read my Twitter timeline where I predicted the run of calls against Purdue because I've seen it so many times. The impulse by officials to even things up just doesn't make any sense. And as I said before, if Trey Kaufman-Renn's bad screens might have been bad screens, they might have been fouls. But those things get called when officials are looking for things to call. And that's just my opinion. See you guys. And but that's what you pay me for, my opinion. So, or you don't pay me for, however you're processing this. Thank you to all of you who support this fine work by becoming a member of goldenblack.com. Cheap plug there. So Trey Kaufman-Renn was clearly the difference in this game, and it was fitting he made the game winner. And that was a really tough shot. That's not his sweet spot offensively. That was a good 8-9 feet out. He's normally within that 3 to 5 foot range, probably at best. And that was a really hard shot he made over Ballo. Really clutch shot, obviously, and one of the shots of the season so far for Purdue. And obviously, in a game like this, not just because it's IU, but because Purdue needs to keep winning. They need to keep winning all their home games, and you couldn't have lost this game and continued to credibly call yourself a Big Ten contender at this stage of the season. But a big-time effort from Kaufman-Renn. Another nice game from Braden Smith, who really controlled the game at times, really wrought his usual havoc on defense with his 6 steals. Purdue keeps thriving as a turnover generation team, which is not normal for this program here the last many years. It's not what Purdue does anymore. But this team is so good in what it does that it's forcing teams into mistakes, and it is really taking advantage of them. Purdue's ability to not only force turnovers but capitalize on them has been an enormous development for Purdue through the course of this Big Ten season, and a shocking one, quite frankly, because that's not what you expected from this team ever. That's not what you expect from this program anymore. It used to be the case, but it's not really anymore. So when you look at the box score, Purdue gets 26 points off turnovers. That's after 29 versus Michigan and 30 against Ohio State. That's pretty remarkable. And it's not just the turnover generation, but it's the turnover where you take the turnover and you make it into something. It's a really, really big deal in basketball. It's a really big momentum swing in games like this, and it really was a difference for Purdue tonight, probably between winning and losing. This was the first game, or one of the few games this season, where I thought Purdue's inferior size, its lack of size, really showed up, because luckily for IU, Oumar Ballo decided he wanted to play tonight, and Purdue couldn't match up with him physically, nor can a lot of people, because that's a lot of man right there. And he's really physical, he's really big, he takes up a ton of space. Indiana seemingly scrapped its ill-fated intent to make him a post-up player, make him a back-to-the-basket scorer, and just went to his strengths as a pick-and-roll guy, as a slip or a screen-and-roll guy is the word I'm looking for. And Purdue really had a hard time with that, so all of those runners Trey Galloway made were the direct result of Purdue having to load up on Oumar Ballo, rolling to the basket to prevent him from A, dunking, or B, getting a putback. Same principles that made Zach Edey so hard for people to guard last year and opened up so many opportunities for Braden Smith. So don't think that Purdue wasn't guarding Trey Galloway. They were just choosing the lesser of two evils. And to Trey Galloway's credit, he made all those shots. He made those runners. And somehow, some way, and I still can't figure out how this was the case, Indiana was the lowest two-point percentage shooting team in the Big Ten coming into tonight, which doesn't make any sense when you have their size and your leading scorer is a 60% dunk and layup guy. Nevertheless, that was the case, but they sure weren't tonight, because they made all of their two-point baskets, it felt like, led by Ballo, led by Galloway, and I just don't know if IU's playing the right guys. I thought that one of the best things that happened to Purdue, or the best things that happened in Indiana in this game, was Malik Reneau getting in foul trouble, because playing those two guys next to one another, Ballo and Reneau, doesn't make a lot of sense. Luke Goody spreads the floor, and as I said before the game, I thought he was going to be IU's most important guy tonight. That wasn't the case, but he certainly was a difference maker. Had they played him more, had they started the game with him, Purdue would have had real problems right out of the gate, probably guarding them. Galloway was much better than Miles Rice tonight. The minutes did reflect that. But it just seems like all the guys they spent all that money on in the offseason, other than Ballo, and I'm including Malik Reneau in that because they had to retain him, all those guys haven't made them better. Trey Galloway was their guy tonight. I thought Luke Goody, he is a transfer, so I'm a little bit over my skis here talking about this stuff, but Luke Goody's a 4 or 5 year college player. He really helped them tonight. Malik Reneau, not so much. Kanan Carlisle's out. Miles Rice didn't give them a whole lot in this game, and basically ended up on the bench most of the game. Bryson Tucker is their McDonald's All-American, or whatever he was, from Overtime Elite, who I'm sure didn't come cheap. 0 for 1 in 3 minutes and 46 seconds of playing time. Mbako was good. Mbako was really good, but the guys who really, really put IU in position to win this game, other than Ballo, were Trey Galloway, Lou Goody, and those should be the guys you're riding, in my opinion. I'm not a coach, obviously, but I do watch games, and it just seems like those guys kind of make things happen. They care. They're competitors. And I don't cover Indiana, so I probably shouldn't be talking about them, but I thought it really helped Indiana when Malik Renaud had to go out of the game because of fouls, because it put Goody out there, and it really helped Indiana when they put the ball in Trey Galloway's hands more versus Miles Rice's hands. But this comes down to Trey Kaufman-Renn, being out of the game for more minutes than Purdue would have preferred he be out of the game, and we covered that exhaustively earlier. But also Purdue's not shooting threes very well right now. When they were up in the second half by a couple of possessions and it seemed like Purdue might be ready to kind of blow things open a little bit, Purdue had like 3 or 4 threes, good looks from three. A few of them from Miles Colvin, I think one of them from Braden Smith, where they just couldn't make the shot that really kind of breaks the levee, so to speak. They just couldn't make that three. And I think that's a little bit odd about this team because they are a good shooting team and they are generating good three-point looks. They're just not shooting very well. It seems like that. I don't think they're shooting as well as their numbers indicate. Their numbers tonight don't indicate anything. They were 2 of 13, but when you look at their season percentage, I always say it's not how many threes you make, but when you make them and what they mean in the big picture of the game. And Purdue had a couple opportunities there to really make a big one at a big time and just couldn't do it. And I think if you had Kaufman-Renn without those 2 moving screens and you maybe made one more three, I think you're sitting here looking at a relatively comfortable double-digit win here. But that's just all hypothetical stuff. But that's what I'm here for. I get paid by the word. It's Friday night. Nobody's watching this anyway, so I just got to fill time here. One last thing to mention, C.J. Cox and Jakari Harris are just, the combination thereof are just absolute difference makers for Purdue right now. Do I use the term difference maker too much? I feel myself slipping into Danny Hope mode, where Danny Hope used to call everybody a difference maker, to the point where it didn't mean anything anymore. And I think I'm now treading into dangerous waters in that regard, using the same terms over and over again so that to the point where they just get drained of all their meaning. Anyway, C.J. Cox rebounding in this game, C.J. Cox energy, Jakari Harris's defense, Jakari Harris shot making, which kind of came from out of nowhere this Big Ten season, a very welcome development for Purdue. Jakari Harris's stone-cold foul shooting in key situations, just absolute godsends for Purdue here. Something that's really completed this team as it's hit its stride, and big things are on the horizon for those guys at Purdue, but big things are materializing right now. Their ability to get in transition, their ability to take some pressure off Purdue's backcourt. This is 180 degrees different from what Purdue experienced in non-conference when, Purdue was playing 2 freshmen in its backcourt against adults, as is still the nature of college basketball. And when those teams are Texas A&M and Penn State and they're pressing you and you need that third ball handler, those guys just weren't ready at that point in time. These guys now in Big Ten play, not necessarily high-pressure teams, these guys are ready now. They might not be that true point guard, that quickness guy that can dribble past people, but they are absolutely positively winning players at this early stage of their career, and they deserve a good amount of credit for this win as well. Fletcher Lawyer made really clutch plays. At times, Camden Heide rebounded very well, 5 points and 5 rebounds for him in 27 minutes. That's a team-high 5 rebounds. That tells you what kind of rock fight of a basketball game this was for Purdue. Offensive rebounding was Indiana's best chance here. That showed up a little bit early, maybe not as much late. Purdue did get out-rebounded, but Purdue should have gotten out-rebounded in a game like this because there's nothing they have that can match Umar Bala, just like there was nothing anyone else had that could match Zach Edey the years before. It is this really weird turnaround, or this really funny turnaround from last year where Purdue is now on the other end of a lot of the stuff that other people experienced playing against Purdue. So that's what I got from Purdue's 81-76 win over Indiana. another late Friday night game. I hope that your Friday nights have treated you well these last couple of weeks. I hope you haven't been watching these videos from a jail cell. I always thought that Friday night was supposed to be the night where people went on dates. They went out and partied, maybe got in some trouble. But I appreciate you guys for postponing all your revelry until after this video has posted and you can watch it as close to real time as possible. So that's what I got. Brian Neubert here from goldenblack.com, from the John Wooden Room in Mackey Arena. Thank you for watching. Thank you for reading. Thank you for listening. And thank you for processing our materials, however it is you process our materials. And thank you once again to the Purdue Club Hotel for your support as always. We appreciate it. I will talk to you guys again Tuesday night from Iowa, where the Purdue Club Hotel location, I believe, is just breaking ground. So look forward to that one day, the Purdue Club Hotel in Iowa City or Coralville, Iowa, one or the other. So thanks, everybody.